Hey guys, what's up? My name is Lacy, and this is An ADD Woman, where we're going to talk about treating ADHD naturally when you are a woman. Welcome to An ADD Woman podcast. I'm your host, Lacy Estelle, writer of all things about ADHD parenting and being an ADHD mother on Mothering the Storm with Lacy Estelle at lacyestelle.com. Here on an ADD Woman podcast, we're going to switch it up and talk about all things to do with ADHD as an adult woman and how we deal with it. Now you might be thinking, ADHD, women don't really have that. Actually, we do. We've all just been doing such a great job for years of masking it. So let's dive in. Let's talk about everything that our ADHD touches in our lives. And when I say everything, I mean everything. There is not one thing when you have ADHD that it doesn't affect. I'm so glad you're here. And if nothing else, I hope that you take away from this that you are not alone, you are not a failure, you are not lazy, and you are not stupid, and you are definitely not crazy. You just have ADHD, and you're just like me. So on my blog, Mothering the Storm, some of my most popular blog posts are how to treat ADHD naturally. Now, this was something I wrote from firsthand experience, and it has garnered, I believe, over 10,000 shares on Pinterest, Facebook, and the like. But what's most interesting to me is that what worked for me very well in the beginning, over time has definitely changed. And while I will say that treating ADHD naturally is always something you want to strive to do, it does not mean that it is a solution that will fix absolutely everything. Ultimately, when you really think about it, ADHD, just like any other mental illness, comes down to a matter of chemical imbalance in your brain. Sometimes your diet and your lifestyle routine, your exercise, all those different things can compensate for that lack in chemicals. Not all the time. And sometimes there will be things specifically in your adult life as a woman that your exercise routine or your dieting or your non-dieting or your coffee intake no longer can make up that gap between, what your brain has and what your brain needs. So with that, I'm going to kind of go over what I used at that time, why I did it that way, and what I've found since then. So I hope you'll stick around. It was a very long process. And here's the truth. I started treating my ADHD naturally long before I had a diagnosis. I went on a diet. This was 6 years ago. I read a book by J.J. Virgin called The Virgin Diet. Highly recommend that book. It's excellent. She's very, very good. And she's a woman. So she's definitely talking to women about women and our weight struggles. And she talked a lot about high inflammation foods that naturally cause inflammation in our body, and what to do about them, how to cut them out, how to deal with them, how to recognize when your body is reacting to them. She talks a lot about something that we hear a lot about these days, especially I feel like it's kind of a buzzword. The whole idea of food intolerance, right? Where people went through this idea of, you have food allergies, which definitely can cause a life-threatening reaction. But then you also have this thing called food intolerance, and you get mixed reviews from people, from different doctors that will say, oh, it's a thing or it's not a thing. Well, I'm here to tell you, a lot of the doctors that I follow, Dr. Axe, Dr. Amen, a lot of them talk about how the chemicals in our brain are directly related to the bacteria and our gut health. And our gut houses our immune system, and it houses, how we create dopamine, how we create serotonin, how we create norepinephrine, all these, I know, stupidly long words, but all of those are chemicals in your brain that help you function the best. Ultimately, if you are eating high inflammation foods and you're putting them into your body over and over again, and you're not realizing that they're causing you inflammation, they are wreaking havoc on your gut, and your gut-brain link system will obviously, it's not going to work at optimum levels if you're constantly giving your body the wrong foods. I went through that diet and I lost 40 pounds in 3 months, and I kept that weight off for probably 4 years. Over the last 2 years since I've had my third son, I have on and off gained it back, and I think that comes down to a couple of things. One, your body will always adjust to what you're doing. They say it a lot in exercise. You hear it a lot when personal trainers will say you have to keep switching it up. You have to keep your body kind of guessing because your body will always want to just kind of coast. I think I got very complacent with where I was with my eating habits, and I became lazy. Not only that, but the hormones that I dealt with all throughout my pregnancy, sometimes during my pregnancy, as a woman who has ADHD, who was having terrible nausea, terrible morning sickness most of the time. I was in pain, I was uncomfortable, as any other woman who's had a pregnancy can relate. I just ate whatever food I could keep in my stomach. I wasn't always super concerned about health-wise. I actually had the strangest craving at the beginning of the pregnancy. I wanted sharp cheddar cheese and apples. It sounded so good to me. That was the only thing I wanted to eat for the first 3 months. Even though I hadn't had dairy, I hadn't been eating dairy for 3 or 4 years. After I basically derailed all of my good, healthy eating habits throughout the pregnancy, then I went into being a mom of 3, and I found myself always reaching for the easiest foods. So coming back to how to treat ADHD naturally, what worked for us, what didn't work for us. Originally, this post that I wrote, that actually, now that I'm looking at it, has been shared close to 12,000 times. It was because at the time, I was trying to help my son control his ADHD. He was 8 years old, I believe, at the time that we did this. And I was trying to help him control his ADHD without needing to put him on medication. Why? Because at the time, I think I had a very strong misunderstanding of medication for ADHD. I just immediately thought medication just means bad. If I have to put my child on medication, maybe that means that I'm one of those lazy parents who just can't control my child. I'm using quotations here, people, so if you can't hear the sarcasm in my voice, please know it's there. I can't control my child. I can't get him under control. I don't discipline well enough. Mind you, I had some pretty toxic friendships and relationships throughout all this time of my life, and I definitely had this misconception in my head that I was just this really bad parent, or it was either that or my kid was just royally messed up. And as a mom, you are constantly blaming yourself. This has to be something I did either during my pregnancy. Maybe it's something I did during their youth years, their little years, their toddler years. I screwed up somewhere along the way, and now my kid is paying for it because they can't control their behavior and I can't control them. So everything just feels out of control. And in my attempt to do this, we cut out a lot of foods for my son. The main foods we cut out were the high inflammation foods that I had cut out the previous year. We cut out corn, gluten, dairy, peanuts, sugar, eggs, and soy. Now, you might be asking yourself, what in the world is left after you've cut all that stuff out? Well, basically non-processed food. We had to cook everything from scratch. This wasn't super difficult at the time because I was working a minimally part-time job. I was freshly divorced, unfortunately, but I was staying with family, and so I was always kind of able to cook him stuff. And being that I had gotten pretty good at cooking from scratch over the years previously, not only with my new diet, but also previous to that, I had gotten pretty good at baking. Adapting certain recipes wasn't super difficult. I was able to cook him, stuff that looked like the processed stuff. I would cut him up, different meats and cheeses and fruits and put them in cute little trays and make it appeal to his eyes prior to it appealing to his stomach, that it looked like he was eating a Lunchable, even if we all knew it wasn't really a Lunchable. Now, at this time, I was asking my son all the time, how are you feeling? Do you feel better? Do you feel like you're functioning better? I also added a long list of supplements to his diet at the time. One of the first ones being Barlean's fish oil, Omega Swirl. This is still one of the best supplements that I can't recommend to people enough. It works for kids who have sensory issues, not as far as treating their sensory struggles, okay, But if you need your kid to take fish oil, because we all know it is probably one of the healthiest things you can get into your body, omega-3s are just so good for you. But you obviously cannot always get a child to swallow an omega-3 pill. Not to mention, my sister and I have talked at length about how some fish oils just give you those nasty burps afterwards. Now, I don't know about you, but nobody wants to taste fish oil later on after they've already consumed it. So, Barlean's fish oil omega swirl, it tastes like, gosh, it almost tastes like candy. My kids would beg me to have more, and I would have to tell them, no, it is a little expensive. It's about $30 a bottle. That'll only get you about 15 servings, if I remember correctly, but it literally tastes like, I guess the best thing I could compare it to would be maybe like lemon yogurt. Well, that is if you get the lemon flavor. They have all sorts of different flavors. I think they even have one out there that's like strawberry smoothie. It is a cream. You actually pour it onto a spoon. You take it like by the tablespoon. Oh man, it is so good. You'll be looking forward to your omega-3 every day. The other thing we added was just a regular multivitamin. Now, something that I always come back to in my blogs is the brand Garden of Life. I'm very impressed with their brand of supplements. I think they're very good. And I really like that they care so much about making sure that the ingredients in their products are very wholesome, that they do what they say they're going to do, and they're plant-based primarily. So I did put him at that time on a Garden of Life. It was a vitamin code, kids chewable whole food vitamin. He would take that every day. I also put him on probiotic chewables. Now, at the time, I was also taking probiotics. Now, here's the other thing I will say. Now, as I'm going through this, I'm reviewing what I did for my kid, and I would like to try to think about how you can apply it to your life as a woman, as an adult woman. Probiotics are huge, and this is all going back to talking about how our gut influences so